Generally, we feel pretty good about the group, but there are some developing cross currents, though, right? Like on the plus side, the Fed still is raising short-term rates, and that's probably the most important factor right now. We've got an easing regulatory environment, which is huge. As you appropriately noted, about a week ago now, we got probably the most significant capital return dynamics we've had in basically the past decade, so that's good. Additionally, you've got a very benign credit environment. There's pretty frothy M&A, so a lot of things to like, but we can obviously.
What do you do with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley?
Yeah, those are interesting ones. I don't think we've ever seen this sort of conditional non-objection in which companies, especially more than one company, fell below the regulatory thresholds, but were still able to return capital to the extent that they have in the past. So I think this CCAR cycle has been one of relief. In other words, it could have been much more punitive. So generally pretty good dynamic there.
He mentioned the idea of handing over the reins at Goldman. Does that factor into your thinking one way or the other?
I guess I'd rather have our analyst, Jeff Hart, who covers Goldman, go with that name. But yeah, I mean, a lot going on, though, definitely.
What, on the Goldman thing, is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I think that the bigger question for me now, we definitely know David Solomon's going to be the next CEO. I would suggest it's more likely to be late this year than early next year. But the more interesting question, I think, is who gets promoted when David gets promoted.
Right.
And what that says about the future. And someone like Stephen Scher, who is running all the new consumer lending businesses and things like that, if he were to be promoted, it's a kind of a signal for the future. But yeah, we'll see about that. I think that short-term earnings is going to be fascinating because Q1, there was lots of positive tailwinds behind the earnings, whether it was tax cuts, whether it was a bit more pickup in volatility. Q2, I'm not sure we've got all of those same tailwinds to come, so it might be a tougher set of earnings relative to expectations. I don't know your views on that, Scott.
Yeah, so the margin dynamic should still be pretty good. And again, as long as the Fed's raising short-term rates, we're in pretty good standing there. The question is always deposit pricing pressures or overall funding costs, but I think we're in pretty good shape there. And then credit remains very, very benign. So for the most part, we're in good shape. The one thing that we haven't seen a lot of action on is overall loan growth for the industry. That's been disappointing for the better part of the last couple of years. We are seeing better.
What's the one bank you like the most right now?
Yeah, I'd say Wells Fargo, actually, which has been...
Wells Fargo?
Yeah, it's kind of been a chronic underperformer for very well-known and highly publicized reasons. But I think there are three factors at work here. One, they were clearly by far the largest victor in this most recent CCAR. So you've just got enormous capital return. And these guys, if you can spin the asset cap positively, it's that they're husbanding just a ton of capital because they don't have to absorb any balance sheet growth with their capital.
So their stock's, what, at $55 right about now?
Yep, that's about right.
So what do you give it 12 months? What do you think?
Yeah.
What's fair value for this company?
My best guess, mid-60s, 12 months from now. So yeah, because you've got the capital return story. You also have an emerging expense dynamic. These guys have been very transparent about what they need to do on the cost side. And given that the fact that there's not a lot of revenue growth right now, they'll do a great job there.
Reputational factor?
Yeah, no question about that. But thankfully, these issues that they're contending with, a couple of years old now, I think we've moved kind of beyond the drumbeat of a weekly news flow of problematics. Exactly. So now it turns to a cost story, a capital story, and a valuation story.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.